sports are really important vehicles for relationships.
We have purpose. We have a why. We bring people together. We connect.
I feel like God is our greatest supporter and our greatest coach.
Welcome to Rabbi on the Sidelines. This is Rabbi Erez Sherman from Sinai Temple in Los Angeles. This week, I have been waiting for this guest for a very, very long time. This guest is Coach Elliot Steinmetz from Yeshiva University Basketball. Coach Steinmetz and the Yeshiva University Basketball program really drew attention to the idea of the intersection of sports and faith at the highest level with a 50-game win streak over a couple of years. We are just so excited that Coach Elliot Steinmetz is joining us this week. Coach, thanks for coming.
Hey, Rabbi. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So the Jewish world and really the basketball world has been following your journey of a 50-game win streak. This is not just Division III, Division II, Division I. This is all of college basketball. Let's hop in right there, and then we're going to go backwards. What did it feel like to be the head coach of, forget the Jewish institution, but the college NCAA program that had the longest win streak in the entire country?
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it's funny when it's going on, you don't really pay much attention to it. You know, we weren't kind of sitting there counting, 1, 2, 3, 30, 40, 50. I know it's cliche, but we really were focused on one game at a time and just trying to kind of collect W's along the way. And I think once it ended with the Illinois Wesleyan game, it was kind of that's when it became more real. When we were able to kind of look back and be like, wow, 50 is a pretty big number, and something our guys can kind of hold on to and our program can hold on to. But end of the day, it's not a championship, but it's certainly something that got us exposure in the mainstream world, and obviously put a lot of people on board the bandwagon, which was cool.
So this is a podcast less about the sports and more about the faith. Often I have to drag out faith stories from well-known sports personalities, but in this case, faith is just what you do. It's what your players do. It's what your institution does. And we're going to talk about how that intersects at a high level. Now, in 1998 on ESPN, there was a short brief about Yeshiva University and basketball. At that time, you were not the head coach. It didn't really talk about the wins and more talked about the faith and how these players are both studying Gemara at a high level and also trying to play basketball at a high level. I want to show you a very short clip of somebody in that video, Dr. Jeff Gorak, Yeshiva University, past a good friend of mine and a past guest on this show. And this is what he said, and I want you to look at the pictures. I'm going to tell you a story after, and we're going to talk about that. ESPN, 1998, Yeshiva University.
They're ambitious in the sense that they went to a school where they went to school for 6, 8, 9 hours a day, and then found time to play basketball. And he once often said that if these kids can find time after their full day of general subjects and religious subjects to play basketball, I'm going to commit myself to make them as good basketball players as they could possibly be.
I've had now 12 doctors, 17 lawyers, 8 dentists, about 12 accountants.
So in that video that Dr. Jeffrey Gorak speaks about Yeshiva University, they show some pictures of people studying Gemara on the bench. I'm going to show you a picture right now that I have, and that picture was actually sent to me by one of those players, and his name is Rabbi Charles Sherman, and that picture actually is my father when he played at Yeshiva University in the 70s, who was teammates with Coach Halpert. And that picture, I think, really epitomizes what you do in terms of high-level sports and high-level Jewish values. So what does that look like on a day-to-day basis when you're having practice at 5 a.m. and they have to be in Shir at 8 a.m.?
Yeah, so I mean, that's, I always tell when I bring recruits onto campus for visits, one of the first things I always do, whether they have an Orthodox background or not, I bring them to the base medrash. And, I want them to see the study hall. I want them to see all the rabbinic students who are in there, learning Gemara and studying and kind of devoting their day around religion. It's something I talk about our players and recruits all the time. It's what makes us different. You have to have something that kind of brings you together. And I think a little bit of what brings us together as a team is also what makes us unique. And it's this kind of, dual worlds that we're living in where our guys are, obviously they're students and athletes. So, I guess it's more than dual. It's a third world where we're living in, where they have these religious obligations and different belief system and a different way of being brought up. And it's something that I think brings us together both on and off the court. I think it sparks attention because it's something that makes us different.
And does it ever conflict either within the Beit Midrash or on the court? And how do you resolve those differences?
It does conflict. It conflicts more so in a way that we'll have guys who will, want to learn and not want to be at practice or committed to a team. We'll have guys that we're recruiting who are, let's say, post high school, and they go to Israel for a year, and they're going to spend the year in Israel, and that's a year longer that we're waiting for them. And then you get a phone call in the middle of the year, hey coach, I think I'm going to stay for a second year here. I'm having a great experience. I've had guys. I had a first team all conference player probably about 5 years ago or 6 years ago who was a sophomore who decided to leave and go study full time. He wanted to go learn full time and become a rabbi and all that. And I have a very, very simple personal rule. I don't recruit against the base measures. I never do it.
I love that. Can you repeat that? I don't recruit against the base measures. That is amazing.
Yeah,
the Coach K says the same thing, I think.
Yes, it's been in Duke's protocols for the last bunch of years. Also, they also don't recruit against the base measures. But if a guy says they want to go to Israel for a year and they ask me what my thoughts are, I tell them they should do it. And if a guy wants to stay on a bet because it's good for his religious growth, I always tell them to do it. Same thing when I had this kid approach me after a sophomore year, and he was, like I said, a first team all conference player, and he tells me he wants to leave and study in Yeshiva full time. He was waiting for me to kind of argue with him, and I said, what do you want me to tell you not to go learn the whole day? I'm like, I'm not doing it. Just have me in mind when you do it, because I'm not. So, it's just not something I'm willing to do. And it conflicts in that, it obviously costs us certain players at certain times, but I don't look at it as a major conflict because it's just not a boundary I'm willing to cross.
It sounds like a different type of transfer portal than we're talking about in D1.
Yeah.
And one of those, it's interesting that you say that you don't conflict. And in fact, it sounds like you encourage those people to take on religious obligation. One of the coaches that you have is a good friend of mine, Mike Sweetney, a Georgetown Hoya, former NBA player, whose story in itself is truly miraculous, how the Jewish community has embraced him. And I'm not sure if you know this story as well, but I brought, with Sinai Temple in LA, we brought Mike Sweetney to APAC a couple of years ago. And it was during your NCAA run. It was right before COVID hit. And when he showed up at APAC, I said, but Mike, you're in the NCAA tournament. And he said, Coach Steinmetz told me there'll always be another basketball game, but there might not be another APAC policy conference. How did you make that decision when you lost one of your coaches to support the U.S.-Israel relationship?
Again, another thing we talk to our guys about all the time, and I try to promote it. Life is bigger than basketball in so many ways, and I don't even care what level it is. Division 1, 2, 3, pro basketball. There's so many bigger things in life that are so much more important. If we have the opportunity to use the platform, to promote something that's positive, then we have to do it. And for a guy like Mike, who has really kind of just joined our community in such a big way and has fit in so well and is such a great human being, to be interested in the things behind and the policies behind AIPAC and what the importance is for Jews and Israel. It's something that I think is so much more important than him being at a basketball game. So if he misses a game and he makes an impact there, what's lasting longer in life?
Actually, AIPAC was basically one of the last parties for the for the world in March 5th, 2020. But I took him to the first
big super spreader.
Absolutely, and I took him to the Rabbi and Cantor reception. And when Mike Sweetney walked in that room, there wasn't just a look of, oh my gosh, there's a former NBA player here. There was almost a disbelief that this young man is here to support the Jewish people in Israel. And I remember a lot of YU alumni were there, and they said, like, Mike, what are you doing here? He's like, I'm here to support the U.S.-Israel relationship. And it was an amazing, amazing moment. And Mike was introduced to the Jewish community by another common friend, and that's Tamir Goodman. Can we take us to the Tamir Goodman effect, meaning in 2000 when he goes to Maryland and then Towson? And perhaps, are there other Tamir Goodmans that today will end up in YU based on the success that you're having now?
So yeah, I think Tamir was really, and I'm happy to call him a good friend, Tamir. He was the first one, I think, to really kind of change the trajectory of the Jewish athlete. He was someone who was not willing to compromise on his beliefs, and he was willing to still try to at the same time pursue the highest level that he could possibly play. And he succeeded at it. He had some really good moments, obviously in Division I, and then obviously as a professional as well. So, I think he was that first guy to kind of say, you know what, I'm going to do this. I don't care how hard it is. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to make it work. And I think that opened the doors for a lot of people behind him, in both in that sport and in other sports. And, it's kind of continued. And I think, as we've built our program and as we've started to win games, it's allowed guys who might be kind of in that category of a Tamir who can look at a Division I possibility to turn around and say, hey, there's a legitimate option here, and I can play for Yeshiva, and I can be proud of the name on the front of my jersey and have kind of just a different feeling about what I'm accomplishing when I play. And, I think that's what we had, obviously, in Ryan Terrell, who, over the last, 4 years put up numbers that nobody ever has. And that's not even taking into account that he played 7 games 1 year as opposed to a full 30-game schedule. So, it's happening where guys are turning down Division I offers and deciding to come play at Yeshiva and try to do something special.
So let's talk about Ryan Terrell. He's a local boy here from Los Angeles. And in the article that Gary Belsky writes in ESPN, right, Yeshiva University, it's not just a 1998 article about Now-Based Midrash. It's a 2022 article about a possible NBA draft pick on your team. And when his father says, like, Ryan, you're really good, why YU? And his response to his parents were, why did you send me to Valley Torah and Emek if I'm not going to YU? Take us through that maybe recruiting process of Ryan and what that means both to the program, but now what it'll also mean to the larger basketball world.
Yeah, Ryan's a different kind of person, and he's really just a special kid. His whole mentality, his whole mindset is just so different than things that you usually see out of kids. He's super mature. Most of the time, guys are looking at the ego play of Division I and the possibilities that come from it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I actually will never. I'll never doubt a kid or put down a kid who's looking at a D1 dream if that's what they want to accomplish. But through that recruiting process, and I had a prior relationship with their family because his older brother Jack had played for us as well. But
I just met him on Pesach at a restaurant, actually.
Yeah, he's a trip. But
yes.
Ryan throughout that recruiting process was, always extremely respectful. We talked a ton, always expressed interest in the possibility. And it was just so funny because he was looking at all these Division I schools that were offering him scholarships. And at the same time, he was talking to me the same way he was talking to those coaches and giving me the same time and the same respect. And I remember he had gotten the specific offer that he was waiting on. And he called me up to tell me, and I thought he was basically telling me he was going to go there. And he's like, it's nice to know that I could do it. He goes, but I really want to come do something special. And, I'd like to be at YU. And, which is obviously a great moment for us and, changed the course of the program, certainly, and has obviously helped the recruiting now that he's getting the exposure and the professional looks that he's getting.
And so what does that look like when I saw a clip of Gabe Leifer, another former player of yours who really dedicated his time to come back to try to win an NCAA championship, where he said, I believe it was him that said, he walked into a hotel once before a Division I team came in, and then you guys walked in and they said, oh, what high school do you play for? It's no longer that. You now have NBA scouts coming to a practice. Yeah. How did that affect the shift where you often say we play for the letters on the front, not the numbers on the back? Did that change, and how did you keep the humility on the anavut of the program as that was happening?
I think it's our guys, it's our players. I think they come from great families and they come from great backgrounds, and a lot of them, obviously come from different high schools, but a lot of the same values. I think they have something unique. They all want to be where they are, right? Yeshiva is, for most of them, if not all of them, it's really their first choice. It's where they want to be, and they have a built-in brotherhood based on the background that they come from. And I think that's special, and I think it's something that allows them to realize that they represent something that's so much larger than just a basketball team and a university. And I think we've seen that over the last few years with the amount of people who have kind of jumped on board and reached out and have followed us. And our guys feel that. And people ask about the burden of it. And I don't think they look at it as a burden. I think they look at it as a really an honor and a great responsibility. But, I couldn't be more proud of the guys we've had the last bunch of years that, kind of carry that.
So here's a quick clip of Ryan Terrell and what he thought about his process and the team of YU.
All the doubters and people saying that Jews can't play basketball, we want to prove them wrong and, really set an example for all the kids that doesn't matter where you're coming from, doesn't matter who you are or what you believe in, that you can succeed in life.
Ryan Terrell aims high. He wants to play for the NBA as the first Orthodox Jew. As a college junior, he's a star player for the Maccabees, recruited from Southern California to New York, lured away from Division I schools. But his faith and this basketball program made Yeshiva University his pick.
I had a few other options coming out of high school to be able to play, stay religious and play basketball at a high level and try to win a national championship.
So take us through actually a Shabbos, right? You're on a road trip, and how do you have those accommodations? You know, we often talk about BYU not playing on Sundays, but what does YU look like when they're on the road?
So I mean, the best example I think is the NCAA tournament. The NCAA tournament is generally Friday night and Saturday afternoon. Those are the first game. The first round games are generally Friday night and Saturday afternoon. When Yeshiva's in the tournament, it's Friday afternoon and Saturday night. Right. And the way it works is usually you are exchanging film and giving access to film to the coaches of the teams that you're going to play, and you're setting up a schedule while you're there for that weekend of when you're going to have shoot-arounds prior to games. And just all the logistics that kind of go into, playing a game on Friday and then assuming you win playing a game on Saturday afternoon. And, I usually sit on that Zoom call or that conference call or whatever it is. And they go through, the times for Friday, and, we'll take whatever time we're able to get, that works for us for a shoot around and for a film session. And then they start asking about the film exchange and film times and shoot arounds for Saturday for the Saturday night games. And I'm like, you guys take whatever you want. We're not going to be using it. And we're obviously we have to prepare 3 scouts prior to the weekend because we need to account for whichever team's going to win that first game that we might play. Oh, wow. And we don't have an opportunity to really go over scout or to really give our guys a lot or any film or any shoot around obviously for that second game. And instead we finish our game on Friday and hopefully it's a victory like it was a couple of years ago, and we go back to the hotel and we're able to spend Shabbos together and have Friday night dinner and Shabbos davening and a nice lunch Shabbos, and then kind of chill in the afternoon. And then we jumped on the bus. We had about 10-15 minute ride to the court to the gym from the hotel, and we were able to kind of go over scout quickly with the guys on the bus, and then we play. On the flip side of it, this past year we obviously lost that first game, so Shabbos was a little bit of a different field, but that's the cool thing about Shabbos. It's just and by the way, Ryan's the guy who is the best about it. I think I was standing in the back of shul on Friday night. After we lost Johns Hopkins, and I had my head down and I'm sitting there upset, and Ryan walks over to me from the front of the room, puts his arm around me, and he's like, "Coach, it's Shabbos, you're not allowed to be upset."
Wow.
So the maturity on our guys is special, and the way they kind of pick everybody around them up is awesome, and I think that's a product of kind of growing up with Shabbos and other religious ideals.
So we've spoken a lot about the positives that come out of this YU experience of the 21st century. You're not playing other Jewish schools. You're not in a yeshiva league like a lot of the high schools are. Right. Have there been any moments when you go into an environment that their comments about the kippot on the head, their comments about tzitzit, their comments about the Jewish community, their comments about anti-Israel, anti-Zionism? And if so, how do you face that both as a coach and just to really calm the tensions to make sure that you're there for basketball?
Yeah, so thankfully it's not something that's happened often. Until I would say even last year or so, I don't think we've ever had it from a player or a coach. Thankfully, I think certainly in our conference, the teams and schools do a great job with that stuff, and there's a lot of respect between the teams and different backgrounds and all that. So it's not something that we've experienced so much on the court. There are certain places where we go play where it's an issue with fans. It's changed over the years how I've approached it. I think my first few years coaching at the college level, I liked the let's be the bigger man speech and just leave it alone and just focus on the game. And then as things started to change, as the environment and anti-Semitism changed, obviously in New York, but certainly across the country now, over the last few years, my view on it and my approach to it and my talk with our guys on it has changed dramatically. So, we're at a point now where if something like that happens in a game, I'll embarrass the team, and their fans. Like, we'll stop a game if we need to. And it has not happened yet, but We had one incident this year where we addressed it during the game, and we had it addressed during the game by an athletic director. But in general, if it's something that happens at this point, we would stop a game and potentially walk off a court to make a statement, because, like I said, at this point, we're at a point where there's things that are just bigger than the game and bigger than basketball, and lessons that need to be learned.
And so you talked about the brotherhood that the players have. Do you preach, or do they go out to, for instance, other schools and explain what they mean to those children, to the Jewish community, and actually I would say even as importantly, the non-Jewish community who is watching this success story?
Yeah, I think a lot of them have had the opportunity, obviously through the media, but also invited to speak certain places. Some of our guys get asked to do bar mitzvahs these days. I speak in a number of different places, obviously like Passover programs and some synagogues. Right. But I think there is the opportunity there for our guys to kind of spread the message and kind of be a light. The biggest opportunities, honestly, were right after COVID started and the tournament got canceled a couple of years ago, and everybody was looking for content and something for high school students or elementary school students to kind of look at. And for some reason, and I guess good reasons, we became that. And we had our guys doing different Zooms with different schools, and it was just, I think it was a really good lesson, not just for our guys, but for everyone they spoke to on kind of life and perspective.
So besides your guys going out, a lot of amazing people have come to you. Here's a clip of New England Patriots owner Bob Kraft addressing your team at the game with Rabbi Ari Berman standing by. And this is what Bob Kraft had to say.
Has blessed our people in many ways, but pure athleticism is not one of those. So following the accomplishments of the Maccabees over the last couple of years has brought me enormous Jewish pride, and it is so exciting to finally be here to see and watch a match with you.
So what does it mean when a person like Bob Kraft, when I believe Amari Stoudemire also came to one of the games, what does it mean when those people show up giving you respect, and also, with social media putting it out there saying this is a team that we believe in?
It's nice. I mean, it's obviously a positive distraction, I would call it. It's a very cool thing to see, obviously from the professional sports world. We've had Mark Lashley has been to the game, and obviously, Mr. Kraft was at a game, and we've had, like you said, Amari Stoudemire and his Cantor. There's been a little bit of a celebrity row situation going on.
You say Enes Kanter?
Yeah.
Can you actually talk about that for a moment? Because I think his story of, from Turkey, and he uses his platform to really preach goodness and social justice. Tell us the Enes Kanter, why he shows up at Yeshiva University.
So I honestly have no idea. Him and Amari both showed up for our championship game in the conference this year. It was actually really nice. There was a nice presentation beforehand that Rabbi Berman did with the two of them. It was just the whole thing was just actually it was really nice, and it was done very well. But to have somebody like him show up with everything that he stands for, and I think he has now took the name Freedom. I think it's Freedom Cantor. And everything he stands for, to kind of show up at our gym and be there for a game, I thought was a really cool thing. But generally, with this whole celebrity row thing, it's good exposure. Hopefully some of these guys open their wallets and write a check for our athletic program at some point. That would be the best result of it. But it's definitely great, obviously, for building the program and for kind of getting that respect and exposure.
What about the support of Rabbi Ari Berman? The book that I have right behind me is Dr. Jeffrey Guruk's books, Judaism's Encounter with American Sports. And if you read that book, it talks about, back in the day, there was sort of this separation, like, okay, you're athletes, you're Jews, but we're a Torah institution, and we're not necessarily going to talk about that. And now you have Rabbi Berman, who's giving, I believe, after Hanukkah, what it means, even after a loss, what it means of true netzach and true victory. That integration of the leadership supporting sports and athletics, how has that changed over time and influenced the Yeshiva University campus?
It's huge, and Rabbi Berman has been awesome, and he's at games pretty consistently. Sits in the front row, cheers the team on, waits after the games to talk to the guys and to see us afterwards. Super supportive, and just kind of everything around the program has changed because of that. When the leadership up top takes an interest and shows their support, and and honestly grasps the importance of what it means to the university and the student body, everything just changes around it. And it's allowed us to be able to kind of support our guys better. It's allowed us to be able to recruit better. And it's going to, God willing, allow us to have better resources for our program as well in the near future.
So when you were interviewed by YU, you almost didn't get the job. And Gary Belsky tells the story. He says, I quote, I didn't even, Bednarsh, who interviewed you, I didn't even want to bring him back when we first talked to him. He didn't do well on the hiring committee call. He obviously had an agenda, and instead of answering the questions I asked, he kept pivoting to the things he wanted to talk about. I thought that was a bad sign. I can now say that I was embarrassingly wrong. He was trying to share his vision, and I didn't get it. What was your vision in that interview to bring YU to the program that it is today?
The interview process was actually a pretty wild story. I mean, I was sitting in my former job in my office, and the initial interview was on the phone, and it was a conference call, not a video, but just a regular conference call. I think with like 13 or 14 committee members on it. And I'm like hiding in my office, trying not to, with the door closed, trying not to have people outside hear me interviewing for this job. And so I was kind of like a little bit quiet and trying to hit certain points that I wanted to hit in terms of how to build, how I envisioned building the program and competing. And it just didn't feel right or go well. And I just wasn't able to kind of express myself. Somehow I ended up on campus. And kind of, I think the energy was able to come out a little bit more on campus, and I came in prepared. I had a whole little booklet with my philosophies on coaching, my philosophies on recruiting, my philosophies on academics, which I handed out to the committee and then kind of, presented. And it was a little bit more in my realm, I think, and better. But in terms of what I was trying to sell to them, and I don't think I don't think anybody really bought it at the time. I went in probably overconfident, thinking that I could recruit at a higher level, that we could be bringing in, players who I basically went in there with the idea that we could be competing for players with Division I schools. And because of that, I felt that, we were only a couple of years away from winning the conference for the first time and obviously starting to compete nationally. Most of that got laughs, and, that's really nice. But, we were able to get the right guys in here and do it. So it's worked out.
So what does recruiting look like? Obviously, you have a smaller pool because you're going to take a guy that is interested in at least some Torah. I know you mentioned in some interviews that you do have a diverse religious backgrounds, whether there are, I don't want to say secular, but some people that are, not necessarily, let's say, Talmidei Chachamim are going to be rabbis. How do you blend those pieces together?
So we definitely have wide diversity, and I mean, like we've had rabbinic students, as I've mentioned before, and we have we have guys with tattoos and earrings. So we have guys from very, very different worlds, and they're all family, and we treat them all the same way, and they're all thankfully really, really happy to be at Yeshiva. But recruiting, it was one of the things I talked about at the interview. You can look at it as a disadvantage if you'd like to, because like you said, it's a little bit of a smaller pool. I also look at it as an advantage. I think we have an advantage on the guys that we're targeting, right? If we're looking at certain guys from a certain background, from certain schools, and it's we're bringing similar guys in, we have a little bit more of an opportunity to kind of recruit in groups, and to bring guys who kind of want to be in the same place. Some of them know each other previously, and it makes it even easier. So I've always chosen to look at it as a major advantage from a recruiting standpoint. And I think especially now with the exposure we've gotten and the Ryan Terrell story, people are seeing exactly what's going on and seeing that at the Division III level, that we're able to kind of put our guys in a limelight that most schools at the Division I level can't. And that's in a big way changing the type of player and the background of players that now want to come to Yeshiva.
Is there another Ryan Terrell coming up the Yeshiva track that you see right now?
Every year, there's a player that everyone has to say, "Oh, what are we going to do when that guy leaves?" My first year, I was lucky enough to coach Benji Ritholtz, who's one of the best players I've ever coached. I actually was his coach in high school and his last year in college. He was awesome, 1,000-point scorer, first team all conference, the whole deal. And I remember after that year, everyone was like, "Well, you had Benji your first year, and everything went well. What's going to happen when he graduates?" And then we had a kid, Shelby Rosenberg, and another guy, Mike Berg, and they were great, and we started winning, and we went to the playoffs, and we had a home playoff game, and we won the playoff game, the first time in school history to win a home playoff game. And everyone's like, "What's going to happen when those guys leave?" And then Simcha Halpert comes in with Donnie Katz, and everyone, what's going to happen when they leave? And then Gabe Leifer and Ryan Terrell show up. So, there's always another player out there. I wouldn't say there's another Ryan Terrell, but there'll be another player. We have some really good players coming in this year that are freshmen. We have some really good players back. We're working on our 2023 class now, and I think there's exciting things ahead. I think we're going to keep growing and keep getting better.
So I want to ask two off-the-court questions that deal with more universal issues. The first are race relations and how sports can really help on them. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be speaking to the Big Ten Commissioner, Kevin Warren. I'm speaking to him because on Twitter, I found Adam Newman, a YU grad, who's chief of staff of the Big Ten, and he wrote you a letter during this run. Kevin Warren, the former CEO of the Vikings, Minnesota Vikings NFL, and now Big Ten Commissioner, and he explained his deep connection to the Jewish people, I believe, through his father, who was a soldier in America, and he taught him about the Holocaust living in Phoenix, Arizona. And he writes this letter also with the Will family, and it's the Will family campus at YU, and the Will family owns the Minnesota Vikings. How does a story like that then take this small Jewish campus of 2,600 students and really bring different faiths and races together through the story of basketball?
Yeah, it's inspiring stuff. Adam's become a good friend over the years, and he's doing amazing things, and I think he's so well positioned in that world to kind of be a bridge. It's funny. You may have noticed Mike Sweetney is not Jewish, so the two of us actually have this conversation all the time, and talk about the potential that even just the two of us have in our different communities to help bridge relationships and like you said, work on race relationships. And it's something that I think that Commissioner Warren's letter really, I hope, is a starting point for something bigger at some point. But yeah, I think we're in a good spot to be able to really be able to push on that, and I think it's something that unfortunately our world needs more than anything right now.
Actually, I'm just going to commit to it right now. I would be happy to be part of that conversation. We here at Sinai Temple, we have 3 gyms in our shul. Next Monday, we begin our Sinai Temple basketball camp for our 7th year. And we are now partnering with Faithful Central Bible Church in Inglewood and offering scholarships to those young people to have that experience together through the court in a faith environment where we have common values and common values with different beliefs. And so then take us then to a little family story, which is not a secret. It's awesome. Your son, Jacob, who was drafted by, I believe, the Cardinals. Diamondbacks, thank you, in Arizona. One of the first now Orthodox kids to be drafted into the major leagues. Was that all you? Was that him going his way? What was that path now to this young Orthodox kid playing in the major leagues?
It was 0% me. I actually think that when you look at professionals, and if you get a chance to see what they looked like as a kid growing up and how they approached different things, whether it's sports or whether it's school or anything, there's I don't mean it in a bad way. There's like something off. Like you have to be a little bit crazy to take things that seriously as a kid. And I see it obviously with Ryan Terrell, and I saw it I've seen it in my own son. There's a different level of work ethic. I remember even when my son Jacob was playing basketball when he was younger, and he was, I don't know, he was 5 or 6 or whatever it was, and he was outside in the backyard and he was trying to learn how to take lefty layups. And so we worked on the footwork, and I showed him what to do, and I was like, okay, we can work on it more tomorrow. He's like, nope. Stay outside for 2 hours by himself until he got it down. And I wasn't even I went inside. He stayed outside because he was into it. And even, once he started to really take the baseball more seriously, and certainly when he started driving, he, found he had a pitching coach that he works with, and he would drive out there every single day, even if he wasn't throwing, just to be there and be around it and to work out and to talk baseball and to learn. And there's just a different level of commitment to something like that if you're becoming a professional. And Ryan's the same way, which is why he's kind of on that path. And I think I'm just kind of lucky to be a little bit of a common denominator in both of their lives. That's I guess been a little bit of a vehicle that they could use or guidance, I guess, in certain ways. But both those kids, they've put in work on their own that is nothing I could have ever done to put them on the level that they're on.
But your son did not go to Yeshiva University to play baseball, but rather he's drafted. So here he is now taking that religious realm out. And I believe either walking to the games on Shabbat or finding kosher food. How has he dealt with that in his first year of baseball, and I was just watching an interview last night about him, how he's saying, in my high school team, we sort of go on the road and then we do our games and we have our lives. But now you form this new family. What has he either taught his teammates or what has he learned from the outside world on that journey?
Yeah, I think, he's a kid. He's 18, obviously. So he's got, a long way to go in terms of learning about life. But I think he's learning it a lot faster than a lot of kids his age do. He's actually working a job and has responsibilities and places to be. And, he at the same time has this, these religious restrictions and obligations that he has to fulfill and that are important to him. And, it means he has to have very mature conversations with, management and say, hey, this is what I can do. This is what I can't do. This is what I need. Throughout the draft process, he was very, very candid and open with every team that he interviewed with regarding what the obligations were and what he was able to do. And, it was actually written up in an article on I think MLB.com that one of the most impressive things people found about him in the interview process at the draft combine was his kind of openness and his, the way he was prepared with a plan on how to handle each aspect of the religious, obligations and commitments. So he's kind of taken it that way. And the team, I have to say, has been unbelievable. Like they're just so supportive of him. They have taken on the responsibility of ordering him kosher food from a kosher restaurant a few times a week to make sure that he has the meals he needs, because they provide meals for the players. They've given him off for certain Yom Tovim where he needs to be, for the Sidarim, for example, or for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, obviously, and Shabbat he makes work, and they work with him if he has they will not make him travel at all on Shabbat. In fact, right now they're not even having him throw on Shabbat. So they're really, they've been really, really understanding and really good to him, and he in turn works hard and is trying to live up to what the investment they made in him.
Is there a base medrash in the clubhouse or only a locker room?
his base medrash is, I think, Zoom learning with my brother.
Oh, beautiful. But the learning continues.
It does.
No, that's amazing. I actually want to talk about the Israeli baseball team and then the Israeli basketball team, perhaps, for the Olympics. Because for this Israeli baseball team, so new to the country, 6 teams getting the Olympics. Most of the guys are actually living out here in Southern California. They learn about Israel through that experience, and now they're unbelievable ambassadors. People like Ty Kelly, Zach Pempraise, all those guys. Do you perhaps see something like the basketball Israeli national team sort of getting an infiltration maybe of guys like Terrell, et cetera, that then compete at a higher level than perhaps what Israel's national team is doing right now?
Yeah, I think it's certainly possible down the road. I mean, you got to start somewhere, and I think the baseball team has. I mean, what they've done over the last bunch of years. I don't know anybody who doesn't follow them. In the States here to watch them and root for them and show up at their games when they're playing in Brooklyn for pre-tournament games and stuff like that. It's been awesome, and if that can carry over at some point to the basketball world, I think it'd be great. I think also as more Jewish athletes go to play professionally over there, that'll help build it as well. But you're right; it's kind of got that like Maccabiah effect in terms of these guys get that experience and exposure to Israel through a sport.
So you named it the Maccabiah. I believe you coached in 2013 in Australia, if that was correct. And this is what you had to say about the influence
in Israel. I think I was
in
2013.
Israel. Yeah. This is what you had to say about coaching guys who perhaps weren't so religious, but were getting that Israel experience for the first time, and we'll talk about that.
Specific when we went to the Western Wall on that trip, and I remember seeing Mikey Greenman and a couple of those guys were writing. We stopped at the Southern Wall to write the notes that we could put into the wall when we got there, and seeing some of these guys sitting down and writing like pages of notes that they wanted to put into the wall, and I wasn't even filling out a paper because I did it a million times. I didn't need to do it. And here you have these kids are experiencing it for the first time, and they're pouring their hearts into it, and they're writing these notes that are really coming from inside, and it mattered to them. And I remember I hope I don't embarrass him, but I remember Mikey Greenman afterwards coming over to me, and I remember we sat on the bus going to the old city, and I said to the guys, I know you're all cool, high school kids, and you're athletes, and you're too cool for everything, but I'm telling you in advance, there's don't wear a shirt that has like curse words on it. Don't wear something that's disrespectful. You'll feel that like difference when you go there and you see it for the first time. You'll feel a difference even if you don't expect to.
So take us through that when you have kids who are not playing in religious institutions who maybe have very little affiliation with Judaism or even Israel. They're basically coming for basketball, and you say, no, this is what it's about. It's the Kotel experience.
One of the most moving experiences of my entire life was watching other guys experience Israel for the first time. Mm-hmm. So it was watching, like I mentioned, Mikey Greenman, and it was Spencer Weiss, who plays in Israel now in the first division, who I remember we were standing on the top of Masada, and he was just looking out and he was reading everything, and he's just a very introspective, smart kid. And he put his arm around me and he's like, Coach, telling you right now, an 18-year-old kid, he had just finished high school. He was going to play in Princeton for the next 4 years. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm going to go to Princeton. I'm going to play 4 years. I'm going to graduate. And I'm going to come back here and play here. I got to live here and I got to experience it. And he did it. And it's like, 4 years in college didn't kind of ruin that for him. And I think watching those guys experience Israel, and we're so spoiled by it. People mm-hmm. who have been there many times, or if you grow up with a certain background where you're learning about it constantly, you're spoiled by it. You don't appreciate it. You go to the Kotel and it's like, yeah, I'm at the Kotel again, and these guys are seeing it for the first time and literally like living, breathing, and feeling their own history in a way that I don't ever remember experiencing. And I got to watch them experience it, and it kind of it was so moving, and it really, it changed my whole perspective on trips like that in a very, very big way. So, I'm a huge fan of what they do and the touring and everything that Maccabi USA puts together.
So I want to push you on that for a moment to help, because we're living in a world where American Jews, according to Pew Studies, are less and less connected to the land of Israel, and sometimes, God forbid, even not so pro-Israel. How is sports, as you saw it, right? Now we're talking YU. Now we're talking Kevin Warren and the Big Ten getting on board. Now we're talking black and white. Now we're talking Jews finally experiencing Israel through basketball. What's our responsibility then to come back when we leave the court, to not have our stories in our hearts, but to share them?
I mean, I think it's important, obviously, to talk about it, and especially in sports where you have the ability to kind of shift over to mainstream from just kind of the school you're in or the background you're from, and you have the ability to affect people on a mainstream level. It's important. I think it's important on social media to use a platform, if you have it, to speak up and make sure the truth is out there as best you can. I mean, we all know lies spread a lot faster than truth, and Twitter and Instagram are full of lies. But it's important to do the best you can to combat it. And I think, even more so, you look at what Bruce Pearl is doing at Auburn University, right?
He's coming on the show, yeah.
Oh, you're gonna have him on? That's great. Ask him about the trip he's taking.
Absolutely, this coming August, University of Auburn.
Whole team to Israel. Yeah, he invited us to come with them. I don't think out for us. Yeah, he's an unbelievable person, Bruce. He's really just a very, very special. And
person. His Purim press conference in the NCAA tournament with Ukraine, saying that he is Mordechai. I mean, that is about as authentic as you get. Yeah.
I spoke with him about that afterwards, and I told him, I wanted him to know the impact he had in not just the Jewish community, but literally the world community at large, and the amount of people that are watching him and seeing what he does, and he's a real leader.
So I spoke with Sherry Levin a couple of weeks ago. She's the women's coach for the Maccabiah team, but she also is a Hall of Famer at Holy Cross, and I don't know if you know her story, but they dedicated the locker room to her, and they put up a mezuzah saying, "Will your rabbi come?" And she talks about coaching often people who are not Jewish, but using words of wisdom and Gemara, if you wish, and inspiration from the Hanukkah story. Actually, she told a beautiful drash about the shamash, how each player is the shamus. Your guys know their Gemara. You guys know your Parsha and your Parsha Nut. Do you bring Torah in the locker room? Do you bring Torah in the huddles? What does that look like? Or you say, you know what, that's separate. You're going to get your learning the Beis Medrash, and you're here to play basketball.
So it was not something that we did in the beginning. You never, obviously as a coach, you when you're trying to inspire, you draw from different things, and there's no doubt there's, certainly biblical stories that we've drawn from in the past. But it's not necessarily something that we've focused on or pushed. But about 5 or 6 years ago, we had an assistant coach, Daniel Tamir, really, really good guy.
I know him very well from the Valley.
Yep. Correct. Lives out in LA now. And
he does the Musser. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. And that's what happened. He asked me for permission for 2 minutes after our pregame, meeting in the locker room, for 2 minutes, optional for any of the guys who wanted, to have a 2-minute little musher schmooze. And that's kind of kept up even after he moved away. We have, one player every year who's responsible for doing it, and optional. Most of our players choose to stay, and they do a little 2-minute, little quick, either Dvar Torah or a musser schmooze or some kind of inspiring, theme from the Torah. And it's, I think, I like it. It's something, again, like I said, I'm very big on what makes us different and being unique in the right way. And I think that's part of it.
I think we should tell Joe Lenardi and Jay Billis on their shows that one of those episodes should literally be Musser Schmooze. I think it would change college basketball in the right way. It'll deal with NIL, deal with transfer portal, and we'll be in good shape.
Change the world.
Absolutely. So final question, why are you coming up this year? What to expect, and how can we as ambassadors to you help spread the message of what you're doing on and off the court?
I mean, I think you're doing it. I think by doing what you do and kind of bringing out that context of sports and religion, I think it's awesome, and I think it's something that people need to see more of. For us, I think we're going to have a really good year. I'm excited. We have a tremendous schedule. Our schedule is probably the toughest schedule we've ever had. I'm really excited about it. We're playing some really good teams, and we have some really good young players coming in. We have some really good players coming back who I think will be good leaders and will kind of improve on where they were the last couple of years. And then we have some, I think, real studs coming in, and it's going to be a nice mix of kind of young and older players who are going to learn to kind of grow together as the season goes on. But I expect to be in the same place at the end of the year, but hopefully with another W.
Amen. We are excited to follow the journeys of Coach Elliot Steinmetz, Yeshiva University. We are thrilled that you joined us, and we hope that if YU has a trip out west, we get to host you here at the shul as well and in the community. Coach Elliot Steinmetz, Yeshiva University basketball, 50-game win streak, the longest one in Division I over these last couple of years. Thank you for joining us, and Rabbi on the Sidelines.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.